the pictures went away, so I was like, oh, maybe I embarrassed Peter. For those who I haven't met yet, because of distance, and hopefully this is the year that we shatter through the geographic dispersion of us. I guess technology is a big help. But I'm Kristen Gant, owner of Elixir here in Atlantic Highlands, New Jersey. And it's a popular stop-off spot as folks kind of traverse from Chesapeake Bay to the Great Main and everything else. So anyway, behind me, but definitely we will be switching positions here, is the master sailor, my husband, Rick Applin, and all the work, of course, all the work that's been done on Elixir was done by him. But we'll get into more formal introductions when we kick off. I think Jeff is our Commodore is planning on, and there he is. Hi, Jeff. Joining us.
Good evening, everyone.
Okay, cool. So nice to meet those who I haven't met before. It's me without my glasses. So we see Penn. Okay, great. There's Peter. And Edith. Yay! Welcome. You're Edith, you're on mute. So there we go. Okay.
I don't do well in this.
Oh, that's okay. You're doing great.
Yeah, you look great, Edith.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Very, very happy. So Edith is my stepmom and the original owner of Celerity, which on the panel, Rick will be talking about, Stanford, who purchased Celerity from Edith and has done a lot of work on Celerity as well. So kind of all in the family here. All right, Hunter, welcome. Hi. Chicago.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good.
Thanks for having me.
So are we doing this seriously with the happy hour? Does anybody have your happy hour cocktails with them or snacks? Okay, yay, okay. All right. So I just want to do a sound check. I'm gonna ring this bell. Can you all hear that?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So we're going to get started in a minute here. And one of the biggest challenges in doing one of these forums is we have a lot to talk about. And literally we can be on one topic and an hour and a half, 3 hours will go by on one topic, especially this type of topic with technical and mechanical questions. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it fun. We have a lineup of cool things that we're going to do to make it fun, but a lot of it wraps around having specific kind of time to cover off on these topics. So when we're about a minute away or so, I'm going to ding the bell just to let whoever's speaking at the time know that we're about ready to move on to the next topic. So with that, I asked, as we kick off, Jeff to just say a few words as Commodore and kind of whatever you'd like to say to kick us off, and then I'm going to go over the agenda.
Well, first, I'd like to thank you, Kristen, for organizing this, Shanghaiing the volunteers to speak tonight, and generally just having great enthusiasm with regard to making our association a little more active this year and a little more useful to the members. To everyone listening, the website is close to completion. It's really super, at least the drafts that I've seen. We're sorting out some of the technical kinks and, for example, how to make sure that not everybody in the world can join the association if they wanted to. And also the results of the survey, I think Mariana will be sending that out to us. There weren't any great surprises in that we had a fairly good response with regard to it. And I like to think we're up and running this year. I don't know how many of you all have gotten your vaccinations and feel more comfortable about meeting. I've gotten my first, so I feel a hell of a lot better, but I'm an old guy, so it was a little easier to get it. But with that, let's get going, Kristen.
Okay, great. Jeff, thanks so much. I really appreciate all the support you and Marietta have worked with me to get this up and going. And I'm going to share my screen. We'll just jump right into it. First of all, can everybody see the screen? Everybody's good? Okay,
Perfect.
cool. Also, we have one of our panelists, Walt, who is in the process of getting his video on. But Walt, are you on voice-wise?
I'm on voice line. We're going to scratch the video,
Okay,
but
okay,
I
cool.
can hear everything. Okay.
I think we all know what you look like, and I can pop up a picture, if we get there. So anyway, with that, I think you can see here that I have pictures of everybody's boat here upper left, LLE with Ed Stroh, and maybe just one by one, a real brief introduction as we talk a little bit about, how long when we got our boats, how long we've been working on it, what level of work we've done on the boat, etc. Just a, minute to introduce yourself to everybody. Ed?
Okay, Kristen, thanks. My name's Ed Stroh. I'm now living in Barrington, Rhode Island. I was living in the BVI for about 15 years before I moved up here. Had the boat for, it'll be 11 years this April. I bought it through Hinckley up in Southwest Harbor. They were the broker. Actually, that's where the boat was. It's a 1985 Mark III sloop. And as far as the work level that I do, I basically do everything except electrical. So I do all the mechanical, I do the plumbing, do the Brightwork. I don't actually do the all grip work because I don't have the equipment for it, but I do all the prep if anything is going to be painted.
Thanks, Ed. We're really excited you're on, and you're going to find out very soon why. Ed is a wealth of knowledge. We have Walt on the line, and Walt?
You can hear me okay?
We can hear you fine. Yep.
Okay. Walt Shoemaker. I own the vessel Anytime. She's a Mark III yawl, series number 113. She was built in 72. I've owned her 17 years. I've been a member of the association for 16 years. The boat is well suited for coastal and gunk holing. That's what she was originally designed, and pretty much over her 49-year history, that's what she's done. As far as the work on the boat, I'd put myself at a 5. I did not have any mechanical abilities when I bought the boat. I had no tools. But to save my pocketbook and also for the love of the boat, I have learned a lot of it, and I've fixed inherited problems. I perform a lot of various repairs and maintenance. Electrical, have replaced windows. As far as major projects, I would put it major projects at a 9. Have replaced the engine twice, and the latest replace was a common rail Yanmar. One thing I would like to note is that 2 of the 6 members that are on this meeting tonight are own boats of the original members, and I have the log in front of me from 62 years ago with Morty Engel and Norv Reeser of their original start. And I think this is going to be a great second generation. That's it.
Great. Well, terrific. By the way, the Anytime is on the lower right-hand side of your screen, and it just so happens to be anchored outside of Atlantic Highlands where Rick and I live. And so just FYI for those who just joined. And we're going to move to Rick Stanford. Rick, with Celerity.
Yeah, I own Celerity. I bought it from Edith, who was just right down there, 3.5 years ago. I finally got it in the water this year. I haven't been ignoring you, Mrs. Gant. I just, it hasn't been wet yet. So as soon as I get it sailing this spring, I'll let you know, and whenever you can come down and go whenever you want to, whenever we're out. So I just want you to know I haven't forgotten you. It just hasn't been sailing yet. So, and Mrs. Gant and her husband were the original owners, and they took it all the way around the world. So then they brought it back, and it sat on the hard for a few years in the open, and so it needed a bit of work. And that's what I've been doing for the past 3.5 years, is that work. I'm like Ed, except that I also do the electric. I've replaced about 80% of the electric, changed out the breaker panel, and put a new inverter battery charger in it, and all sorts of things. I replaced the engine. I replaced it with Ed's engine. It's Ed Stroh's engine. When he replaced the engine in his boat, he gave me his engine, and so it fit on the motor mount, so it went right in and runs like a sewing machine. Just started up the other day. Got all new sails except for the main, which apparently Mrs. Gant never used. So so it's like a brand new main. What else? Redid the worm screw for the centerboard. Got a new water heater. Got new plumbing. Put a new toilet in. Not that toilet there. And in keeping with Kristen's semi-theme of rear ends, you can see the rear end of Celerity there. When I bought it, it used to be white. It was white, and then I painted it. I did the all grip roll and tip, and it didn't come out too bad. You can see it's shiny. It only took me 2 years to do that by making a bunch of mistakes, but I'm a lot better at it now.
Well, speaking of rear ends and toilets, the upper right-hand picture is a toilet seat mahogany that Rick Applin did. Kind of represents a little bit of the interior, and so I'm gonna kind of hand it over, if you don't mind, Rick, because there's a lot more you can share with us.
Yep.
Twist this around.
And when I
There
got
we
my
go.
second shot on Tuesday, so there.
Okay.
Yeah, well, as Kristen said, I'm Rick. I'm her husband. Kristen bought our boat back about 4 years ago from a gentleman in Maine. It's a 1980 Mark III yawl. I think the biggest selling feature to me at the time was it had a brand new motor in it. I mean, like, 200 hours on it, what have you. So Yanmar. And it's been great ever since. We sailed it down from Maine around here for about half a season. We then put it on land, and I started restoring her. Finally got her back in the water halfway through last summer, and enjoyed a couple months. But then our helix let go, and we ended up with some damage. She's back up in Maine, getting repainted and what have you. But she'll be great when we get done. The scale of the work, oh God, I'd say 5 or so or more. I don't know. Anything cosmetic, no problem. My expertise is I spent 30 years selling sails, and for 15 years I owned and ran a custom fiberglass shop for mostly racing sailboats and so forth. So fiberglass fabrications, custom fabrications, that's sort of my expertise, kind of why I'm on the panel. But anyway, thank you.
Great. You might underestimate a few things there, but that's okay. We can go in there. Well, thank you, panelists. I'm going to quickly go over the agenda, and basically, let's see, I can get it to move. Oh, jeez. Okay, here we go. It's a little bit slow. So we did our welcome, and we have 4 topics. What we're going to do is we're going to take each of these 4 topics and spread them out into 2 parts. We're going to talk about 10 minutes or so on the first topic. Then between the panelists, I have some questions that I put together, and then we're going to hand it over to the members to ask questions of the panelists. Please do feel free to ask the name of the person you want to, have respond, make it a little bit quicker. As we start to kind of run out of our time, I'm gonna, kind of sound a little bell here, a minute away, just so we know we're about ready to move on to the next topic. So we're gonna go through 4 of those. The 4th one is what we call this lightning round, which is each panelist has 1 minute to answer 1 question. So with that, the second part is what we call B40 topic Jeopardy. And you're going to see we'll have a little Jeopardy board, and I'll keep score. Basically, the goal there is to have the audience drive the questions, and we're going to try to get as many. You have 1 minute to ask your question, and then a couple 2 minutes for each of our panelists to respond before we move to the next. And so we plan on having these sessions for the next, hopefully every month, so we can get as many questions and topics in as absolutely possible. We took some time in understanding what type of work was done. I think Rick did a great job explaining some of what you did, and Ed and Wool, but we put together these categories. Now, for the exterior of the B40, we came up with like 22 categories, but we are looking for more categories. Obviously, I don't have, some very important things on there. Interior as well. So you can see highlighted in yellow here are the topics that we're going to talk about today. And starting with autopilot and steering. A lot of the information that and questions that we came up to steer this program today is from reading the website chats that are going back and forth, and other questions that the members have had. So we're going to kind of go in that order. But we are looking for, and more categories and also more contributions. So we're going to start with autopilot, and in this fashion. And, with the first question, there's been a lot of questions raised about changing and upgrading autopilots. Our panelists have each experienced, kind of removing old and having new features and functions on a new autopilot come in. So we're going to start, Ed, with you, and we're going to ask you, what system did you have? What drove you to upgrade it? And what did you get and why? Ed?
Okay. Well, the picture you see in the lower left-hand corner of your screen is the Raytheon system that came with the boat when it was delivered. It's a rotary drive. You can see a chain there, and the chain goes to a cog that's on the rudder post. And that large blue box, that's the back of the control panel. That would be, the other side would be in the cockpit. So the reason I changed it was I was using it one day, and it just literally stopped working, just like that. And that system is so old that it is no longer supported by Raymarine. So because I had a rotary drive, that's why I opted to go with a rotary drive. And you can see the drive unit in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. I haven't installed it yet because I'm doing some battery work behind where the autopilot's going to be. But I was able to utilize that aluminum platform that the original one was mounted on. So it's actually been a very straightforward setup. And then you see the you see the control unit is mounted on the forward bulkhead in the starboard cockpit locker. And you've got these little twist disconnects to hook everything up. So it's really, really simple. Surprisingly easy. And then the compass was mounted underneath the the starboard pilot berth in the main salon. Originally, I was going to put it in the hanging locker there in the main salon, but I was told you don't want to put it anywhere where it's going to come into the presence of anything metallic, anything metal, because it'll cause the compass to give a false reading. So where I have it is it's all by itself and there's no metal around it, and it should be fine, and it's completely out of the way. It doesn't interfere with anything, so that's all good.
Okay. Thanks, Ed, for that. So we're going to ask Walt, and I know you two have a Raymarine. What kind of drove you to that? Is it the same as Ed's? And if it's different, what drove you to that solution?
I actually have an AutoHelm 6000. What drove me to the solution is that's what came with the boat. And my attitude was, if it was working, don't touch it. In my case, a quick story as to how I've been able to keep it 17 years. About 10 years ago, it broke, and I was able to get a complete AutoHelm 6000 from a place down in Florida. And what I did was swap out parts to figure out what part was broken on mine. And it happened to be the panel. And so the balance of it, I sold on eBay for $950, and the autopilot has been working, better than it was before. The boat originally had a Robertson autopilot. It has a Raymarine hydraulic arm, okay, that attaches to the aft quadrant on a post. And that hydraulic arm is actually on the starboard side. And the way the AutoHelm works is that you activate it by getting the heading that you want on your main binnacle. You don't actually set a heading. You just push the button and it holds wherever you pushed it as far as the flux gate compass. In my case, you have to wait 15, 20 seconds because the flux gate compass is much smaller card than what you have on the binnacle. Speaking of the flux gate compass, mine's a little bit different than Ed's. Mine's actually located in the centerboard trunk. It's in there, and the logic behind it, because that's bronze and doesn't have a metallic effect, and even if it does, the true compass heading doesn't matter when you go to set it, because you're setting it to the binnacle up above. So I basically am dealing with an autopilot that's probably 25 years old, and it works. The disadvantages are that I don't have the modern abilities to be able to run a rum line. If I'm up in the race up in Long Island, I have to disengage it because the currents are going to take it. It'll run the right heading, but it just won't keep the boat on the rum line. So that's what I have to offer.
Oh, thanks, Walt, for that. I know the difference between AutoHelm and autopilot was important. So, so I'm gonna, Rick. I know we had ours the Raygun 400 series. Is it?
Well, 4 years ago when we purchased the boat, it really, for all intents and purposes, didn't even have one. There was some parts of an old Robertson system there, what have you, but it was gone. So since we had all other Raymarine instruments and not knowing, the features or benefits too much of any other of the units, we just sort of went with a Raymarine unit similar to Ed's, I believe. And we've used it a few times. We haven't sailed the boat all that much, but it seems like a nice unit to us. It's an electric unit, not a hydraulic, but so far it seems to work well.
So we also had put the behind. So
Well, behind
got the picture.
the picture on the left, that's actually behind that trap door is the computer part of it. So it's all pretty well, farther aft, and then in front of the in front of that cabinet door, and then that would be on the starboard locker aft. There was a platform built from the original pieces of equipment, and then I just added some cabinetry with drawers and so forth on top of it. But it's all, you can still get back there, but it does require to take a few things out. But I hope that I don't have to deal with it, that it just continues to work nicely.
Yeah. Thanks for that. So with that, we're just going to open it out. Any just open to questions. We actually have plenty of time to ask any questions at the top of the hour.
So for those of you who have the linear drive, where did you get the piece that that hooks to the rudder post fabricated? Was that through Edson? Was that a custom build?
Hunter, in my case, that was all part of the kit.
Listen, forget it. I'm sorry, Ed, that wasn't for you.
Oh. That was the rudder indicator rod was all part of the overall kit that came with my unit. Actually, installing that was the hardest part because I had to actually I had to take the quadrant off in order to drill the hole and to mount that on there. And it's not technically difficult to remove the quadrant, but you've got no room down there and it's tight, and like anything else on a sailboat, it's always tougher than it looks. But I didn't have to fabricate it at all. That was all part of the setup.
Copy.
Does anyone have a remote?
Yes, we do. It's great.
Yeah, I got one right here.
Which system?
As remote as you can get.
Are there concerns or pros and cons about a remote? Obviously,
Well, I
if it
can tell
goes
you the pros of not having one, or the con of not having a remote is that in rough seas you can't hide behind the dodger and easily change the heading of the boat. So I'm always getting drenched when I have to go back and fix the heading. I wish I had one, but I don't.
It sounds like more pros than cons there with one.
Yeah, my old one had a remote, but it never worked, so I was never able to use it. So when I get this one installed and working, it'll be interesting to be able to use that feature.
Robert, did you have a question?
Yes, first of all, I want to thank everybody for their thoughts and their expertise. This is a great format and just a fantastic opportunity to hear about things that are important to all of us on some of these beautiful boats. I have a 72. Our boat is one boat behind Walters on the assembly line, Mark III. We have the original Danforth. As Walt knows, it turns on, but it doesn't do anything. And so obviously we're at a point now we have to upgrade our autopilot. I've heard a lot of talk about the Ray Marine, and everybody seems to think Ray Marine is great. Has anybody had any experience with the Garmin? And is there any difference between the two? And how do you look at this if you're going to upgrade the whole system?
Good, thanks for asking, Robert. Any, Walt, Ed, Rick, did you look at Garmin before you selected Raymarine, or was Raymarine just kind of a default for your other electronic systems?
Well, in my case, everything else I have is Raymarine. So I figured going with Raymarine, it would be easier for everything to talk to each other.
I agree with that.
Yeah, great. I think I'm keeping notes for things that might be interesting things to discover next time around, Robert. So thanks for asking that question. So with that, it looks like we can move to the next topic, unless there's any other autopilot, setup. We could kind of delve into steering and that connection too. But
Kristen, don't forget, people are asking questions. So you have your little
oh,
chat
okay.
thing up.
I'm sorry. Let me show the whole grid. Please go ahead. I'm not seeing from my point because I have the PowerPoint up. So apologies. Please do voice your questions.
Yeah, just pull up that chat thing. Jeff Chandler asked, would we trust the autopilot overnight?
I would think so.
I used my old system, the one that stopped working. I used it overnight a lot. I used it from sailing from Antigua to St. Martin. 18 hours. Not a problem.
We came down from Maine 53 hours and used the autopilot most of the time. It's just so much easier.
So, Kristen, if the question is whether the autopilot should be used while you're down below sleeping, that's obviously a no.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, I know Edith can attest to this, always having someone topside, awake on topside, whether you're 400 miles out in the middle of the Atlantic or whatever the scenario. Edith, anything you'd like to share on that? Go ahead. Edith, can you hear us?
Yes, I hear. Being a naval officer.
Oops.
Oh, you're on mute now, Edith. Take your unclick the mute. There we go. Okay, you're good.
Dick was a retired naval officer, and his theory was you always had someone on deck. And as we sailed for many years, there was never a time when somebody wasn't on deck, but we often used the autopilot. I would get tired. Dick would come on deck. He turned the autopilot off. When it was my watch, I turned the autopilot on. But there was always someone on deck. Now, I can't say I always agreed with him. I can't say it was always a dry time. Periodically, the captain and the crew had disagreements on who was going to stand outside in the rough weather. But we always had someone topside. And she was a pleasure to sail. And I must say, we did not leave her in good condition when Dick took over. And I think he's done a beautiful job. Thank you, Dick.
Thank you.
Okay, Edith, thank you so much for that. So I know the scenarios. So with that, we're gonna move to the topic of exciting topic in the world of batteries. But the interesting thing when we were planning this topic was that weight placement was a big deal as well, and it kind of brought us into different topics. So from the batteries, I know Ed has a different setup than Rick, us, and Walt. in terms of what size battery, voltage, etc. So, with that, we're just gonna, kick off, and I'm gonna ask just, Ed first again, what batteries you have, the choices, white, you picked the size, and, if you were to talk through the pros and cons about the battery setup and configuration. What you see here are, in the pictures, are Walt's. I apologize, Ed Stroh's on LLE. Ed?
Well, when I purchased the boat, the house batteries, there were two of them. They were in a special wooden box, if you will. They were stacked on top of each other, actually. They were in the starboard sail locker. And they were just your standard, wet cell 12-volt batteries. And I used those for 5 years when I had the boat in the Caribbean. When I brought the boat up here 5 years ago, I had someone look at it, for, battery management and whatnot. And he said, the batteries you have are just way, way undersized. So I ended up going with 2 AGM Super 8Ds. These things are massive. They're about 200 pounds a piece.
Jeez.
And I put one in each locker to balance out the weight. And so the big picture shows the start battery, which is an AGM, on top of one of the house batteries. Well, my boat has always been bow heavy. And I've pulled a lot of chain out of the forepeak. I've tried to lighten up the bow as best I could. I keep the boat on a mooring ball, and I'm still bow heavy. And one of the results of that is if it rains and the water pools up in the scuppers, it will not go out the drain, kind of pools up in front of the gates, and then it just destroys the Brightwork on my tow rail. So, having said that, I've decided to move these big monsters behind the rudder post. That area just forward of the propane locker. So I've built a platform. I've measured and cut out the cleats, and I'm in the process of fiberglassing those in. So that smaller picture shows the start battery now in its new configuration, because I've moved the 2 house batteries out of those lockers. They're actually at the house. And when everything's ready for them, they'll go back in the boat. And they're so heavy that the way I get them out of there is I use the main halyard. And I pull them out of those fiberglass boxes. So I'm hoping that having 400 pounds moved about 5 feet aft will take care of my boat being bow heavy.
Thanks, Ed, for that. There are other things in the boat that certainly make bow heavy. We talked a little bit about anchor chain as well. In fact, Walt, you mentioned your anchor chain situation and how you solved for the weight balance.
Yes. I use the box that is up forward in the forepeak. Okay. The batteries that I have are 2 sets of paired 6-volt deep cycle Mark batteries. They're 180 amp a piece for a total of 360, which is fine for my needs. And what I did, a Mark III, those that have 2s and customs who are online, your situation is going to be a little bit different. We have 1,000 pounds of extra ballast, which is up right at the mast, that exacerbates the situation. And then a full water tank, and then when you have the batteries up forward, plus on my boat, I have chain, 200 feet of it, which I just replaced. And how I was able to solve the balance area was that I took the old chain, which was about 175 pounds, and I put it back in the aft lazarette. My boat, I'm not sure every B40 has this. I have 2 stringers that run off the internal stern, and I'm able to, I put the chain back in the stern, and I think Kristen and Ed can attest, you know, when I've visited, my water line is pretty straight, even with a full water tank, forward water tank, although we do have a disadvantage because we do not use, we fill the forward water tank, but we close it off until we run out of water on the saddles, then we open up the forward tank. And I would also add one other thing for those that are, you know, wondering what to do about batteries, and this is how I've satisfied it. I have a 30-gallon holding tank in my under my V-berth on the port side. So at any rate, that's how I was able to get the boat to balance out. I'm not racing, and there's usually only 2 of us on the boat, so the extra weight offset, you know, in the back has not changed things noticeably, other than the appearance.
Yeah, thanks Walt for that. And I know with Rick, our battery setup, we went with.
Well, when we got the boat, we had originally, you know, I think it was 2 D31s that were showing their age, should we say. So by the time when we, you know, after that first season, in speaking with some people around in our neighborhood, and one gentleman who worked for the military who was big into batteries, that's what he did. He recommended going with the T105 6-volt, you know, golf cart batteries. And I thought that was a good idea because of the, you can drop them down to 20% instead of having to worry about 50%, and the number of cycles is dramatically increased. So that sounded good to me at the time. I will admit I got a little greedy, and I thought we could go with 6 of those. And our batteries are located in the starboard cockpit locker forward. And I even made a box for them that I could get them to fit, until I actually realized how much they weighed. And at 31 or 71 pounds a piece, needless to say, I had to cut it down to 4. And I still had to take the starting battery and put it over on the forward end of the other side of the boat. That seems to have worked out, you know, well. For some reason on our boat, even with 300 feet of chain up in the bow and a full tank, we don't seem to appear bow heavy, at least to me. So, although we haven't had extensive cruising with this setup at all, so I can't really say, oh, this is the greatest thing in the world. You know, we just don't know at this point, but it, you know, works well so far.
Thank you for that. So questions about batteries, weight placement, any questions? And now I do have the chat open also if you want to send in your chats. Mark.
You know, the one thing I had to worry about, because I have the same thing.
Oh, I'm sorry, Rick. Oh, I apologize. And then Mark has a question. So go ahead, Rick.
Mark.
Go ahead, Rick.
Oh, I was going to say, I had the same sort of thing, and I have the same sort of bow heavy problem, at least right now. I don't have all the boat put back together again, so maybe it'll straighten itself out. But I went with the 4 golf cart batteries as well. I got 4 Lifeline batteries. They're each 150 amp hours. So I got 600 amp hours all together. Originally, I was going to put them all 4 like you are on the start in the sail locker over on the starboard side, but I thought that since they weigh 90 pounds each, that's 360 pounds of battery over on the starboard side. I figured I'd be sitting sideways in the water. So, and I did that because I wanted to leave the cables between the batteries the same length to aid in the charging. But what I did is I separated. Now I have two on the starboard side and two on the port side. And I just had to run battery cables across the engine. I don't like to do that, but I figured that's better than listing around all the time. My start battery is I set a bunch of stuff up behind the engine. Right behind the engine, of course, is the muffler. I made a little saddle over the muffler and put the water heater on top of that to keep the weight centered. And then right behind the muffler, behind the water heater, between the water heater and the steering quadrant, or where the binnacle, where the pedestal comes through, that's where my start battery is. I got a red line battery there, a red top battery in there. And then in order to be able to charge it, I had, when I got Ed's engine, he had an engine with the two alternators on it. And both were too small. The one was okay for the charging the start battery, but the other one wasn't large enough to provide juice for that 600 amp hour. So I bumped it up to 120 amp Balmer alternator. Because if you're gonna carry that much amp hours, you need a bigger alternator than what those Westerbeeks come with. So we'll see. We'll see.
Rick, since you're on that topic, we got a note from Jeff Chandler asking, what is it that draws so much battery, and do you spend a lot of time offshore? Do you have stuff that draws a lot of power? But when it comes to how much ampage, and Rick, I know you just got Celerity out of the water, but just from an amperage point of view and usage, any thoughts on that question?
Well, I worked out a little spreadsheet, and I don't have a refrigerator now, but I'm going to get a refrigerator, and so the refrigerator will take most of that. And of course, if you're using your refrigeration while you're out using your autopilot, that'll draw it down as well. So those are the two big things.
Mark has a question as well earlier. Mark?
Yeah. Good. Is my audio working? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you perfect.
Okay, so good evening to all of you. I don't know any of you because I'm an Auslander. I live in Maine, Rockport, Maine, and I do a great deal of work on our boat. But so I had a lot of comments, but in particular, Ed on the batteries was talking about his boat being down by the bow. And so my question was being down by the bow as a result of an engine change, because what we found at one point, so maybe 10, 15 years ago, we exchanged our old Westerbeek 4108 engine, which had an empty block weight of 900 pounds. We replaced that with a Westerbeek 55C, which has a block weight of 400 pounds. Okay, so that resulted in a change in the trim because it was 500 pounds less stern. So we had just, ironically, we had just had our boat repainted, and I looked at the water line and said, this boat is down by the bow. And I realized, no, it's not down by the bow, it's up by the stern. Okay, and it was as a result of the engine change. We were actually able to rectify that by moving the spare anchors from the chain locker and some other gear all the way to the lazarette. In other words, retrimming the boat that way. So we didn't move the batteries or anything. So we didn't think that the trim of the boat had anything to do with the batteries. It had to do with the engine change. And so we were able to solve the problem by moving around stuff, junk, chains, anchors, all that. So I just wondered, from Ed's point of view, because he was the first off on this battery issue, does that kind of resonate with him? And was it a result of an engine change?
Good question, Mark. Actually, I was bow heavy when I had the original Westerbeek 4108. I've always been bow heavy, and even after I pulled a lot of gear out of the Four Peak, a lot of chain, and actually, when I pulled it out of the water this year, because I had gotten my top sides repainted last year, right up on the stem, they're on the boot top, because that was down in the water. I mean, I had all kinds of barnacles and whatnot on that. I mean, it was terrible. So I'm hoping that moving this weight a little further aft is going to square that problem away.
Peter, Zahn has a comment about weight as well, if you want to chime in, Peter.
Sure.
And hi, John Melchner. Hello.
So, can you hear me, Kristen?
Yes.
All right. So on Firefly and the other original boats, the batteries were originally in the aft sail lockers. They apparently they got moved forward at some point to offset something that maybe it was the heavier engines. The original boats had lightweight gasoline engines installed. And so the batteries were in the aft sail lockers. That's where we put in, again, 2 pairs of golf cart batteries, only one of which has been installed. The other's wired and waiting for me to get around to it.
Talk about the scratch lines.
But the fact is that I guess I have to tell everybody I'm a naval architect. If you put weights in the ends of the boat, it diminishes your sailing performance. So the fact is that moving things aft and moving things forward to try and balance out is counterproductive for the feel and performance of the boat, even something as big and fat and heavy as a Bermuda 40. The early boats had much more structure and much heavier layup up forward. They tended to be bow heavy, even without the forward tank full. In fact, the whole boat sank about 3 inches on its lines when they launched them, and my deck drains are actually underwater. And that's after we took out the 200-pound refrigeration unit and all the other stuff. So I would encourage people, if you think you're bow heavy, try and find something up forward to move aft rather than trying to find something aft to move further aft, if that makes any sense. So my batteries are in the forward portion of the sail lockers. I also took off chain, and right now I'm bow light, which is good for me. We've raised, over the last 5 years, we've raised the waterline 3 inches on Firefly by taking stuff off and replacing it with other lighter stuff in general. Not quite to the degree that Mike Cohn has done with his whole friggin' rig, but that's, so if you're worried about weight, you don't have to just worry about moving it around. Even on a Bermuda 40, you should worry about taking it off.
Yeah, thanks, Peter, for that. I think that's valuable. And I'm glad we're recording this session. We can play back, but I think some good notes from this conversation would be good as well. Very valuable insights. So thank you. I think it's time to move to the next topic, and we're going to go interior cabin. Now there have been, a lot of choices for restoration of our B40s, and as as we know, they're becoming soon becoming classics, and restoration is key. So I just put a bunch of different kind of photos of different types of interior design, finishes, and mostly interior. I have a couple from Ed exterior too, but I'm gonna kind of move to Rick here to talk about some of the choices in the different types of finishes, such as some of the new finishes that are out there, and then the good old-fashioned varnish that's been around for centuries. So perhaps we can start with Rick Applin first on this, and then we're going to move to Walt and Ed and Rick.
I guess what you're seeing there is our interior that we took some time to basically 2 years redo. As far as my choice of finishes, exterior, I'm still trying to play old school with epiphanes, varnish. I haven't had the boat long enough to learn that it's probably dumb, but I like it the way it looks. When it is done right. Interior wise, a lot of that is just what I tried to do this time. When we bought the boat, it had high gloss everywhere, and which we felt was a little disturbing, should we say. So all of the flat panels inside are done in a mixture of epiphanes, rubbed finish with 20% of high gloss in it, trying to come up with a sort of a semi-gloss, and then all of the trim pieces are done in gloss. I prefer gloss on the cabin sole because one, I like the way it looks. Number two, gloss tends to be more durable than any of the satins or the semis. And the old guys tell me that, believe it or not, it's less slippery. That might be counterintuitive to your thinking, but I don't know. I just like the way it looks. However, what I did do, and I removed most of the cabin sole because it was fairly beat up. But thank God, Hinckley uses like about an inch thick of solid teak and holly instead of plywood. I was able to deck it down pretty hard and flatten it out, repair a lot of the blemishes and so forth. 5 coats of epiphanes, and then 3 coats of polyurethane. Now, polyurethane I don't tend to like out in the sun, but being down there, not much sun at all. And secondly, it's much more durable. So I'm pretty pleased with the way it held up. Even though we've had limited use with the boat, it has held up rather well, and that's something I would definitely recommend.
And it was all one part, right?
Oh yeah, just your basic, the two-part finishes. For varnish on the exterior, I get a little concerned with, because if moisture does get underneath there and start to lift them off, they're a pain in the butt to try and remove them and then reapply. So I try and stay away from that. At least that's, as I say, I'm going old school right now. Maybe I'll learn a lesson and change later if things don't work out. But so far, so good. In the picture that you see, just real quick, I had to redo everything, all the surfaces. The headliner I prefer. I did this on my race boats for years and my customers' boats. The headliner is a 2-part epoxy primer. It's basically the All Grip 545. It rolls out nice, incredibly durable. It cleans up easy. If mildew gets on it, it doesn't stain. And it will, over time, become a little creamy, but I actually kind of like that inside on the inside. The side panels where the port lights are, that's a semi-gloss West Marine, just, standard sort of polyurethane single part paint. Again, limited time in the water, but it seems to have held up well.
So Rick, if we had a mahogany interior versus ash, would it change your decision on what type of?
He's got a moldiness.
No, mahogany, I do the same. I think, however, doing the two-tone on the flat panels with a semi-gloss and gloss on a mahogany interior would actually show up more. It doesn't show so much on the ash, but the only other thing I might consider real quick, I just started using it's actually a polyurethane. This would be for the interior, of course. It's a Minwax product. It's their Helmsman line. It's supposedly nautical, what have you. That drawer that you see that I manufactured, because our boat, I noticed on Walt's boat and a couple other Hinkley's, they had the drawer for the silverware. We never had one, so I had to make one, of course. That is done in that semi-gloss polyurethane, and I'm real pleased with it. And if I had to do the interior over, I might actually use that on all the panels. So
Yeah. So all sorts of different thoughts on this, and we're going to move to Ed because he's done a lot of finish work, Ed, on your boat, and the photos to the right here, exterior finishes on your companionway. So do you want to tell us a little bit something about that, and certainly what goes behind the products that you're using? And
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
Go ahead.
Okay, Kristen. Yeah, like Rick, I'm old school. I use captains, or I use flagship on the exterior, and I also had Sunbrella weather covers made for everything: tow rails, hatch covers, companionway, you name it. So that really cuts down on me having to, slave over the exterior constantly. I mean, I'm always touching up, and I'll do my 2 refresher coats every spring, but I'm able to defer a lot of that big work by using the weather covers. Down below, I also have a white ash interior. And when I purchased the boat, everything vertical, horizontal down there, with the exception of the cabin sole, was done with that Epiphanes rubbed effect, which I really like. So I've just kept that. And whenever I do touch up or I'm redoing a panel, that's what I use. And as far as the cabin sole, I've completely redone it once, pulled everything out, stripped it down to the wood, and then built it back up. And that was a roll and tip job. And again, I used a flagship product, because it's a heavy build. And I've been really pleased with it. Now, I was just talking to a good friend of mine who is a shipwright, and he's been using Allspar, which is a varnish made by Allgrip, and he's really pleased with it. And he said that the Allspar finish, when it dries, it's not as glossy as a Captain's or a Flagship. So he thinks it would actually be even better for a cabin sole, because if it's a high gloss, it's going to show every divot, every scratch. It's kind of like a black car. So I'm redoing the cabin sole boards. We're up in the forward cabin and the area in front of the head. So on my finish coats, I'm going to try this Allspar and see how it turns out.
So, Rick Stanford, I know you've put a lot of elbow grease into Celerity. And any learnings about finishes from what Ed and Rick?
Well, right now Celerity is a it's like a what's that magazine, Practical Sailor. I've taken it down to the wood just about everywhere. Interior, exterior. And so I'm trying different things. I put honey teak on the rub rail and toe rail. So we'll see how that holds up. It's been holding up pretty good. I got to touch it up. I did the Bristol finish and the cockpit. Down below, I've been doing the same sort of thing as Ed's been doing with the captains and whatnot. I took the cabin sole out and took it down to wood. I had to repair it a couple times because some of the boards had broken, and so I went and bought some holly and some teak and made new pieces. So that's looking pretty good. It doesn't quite match as well as it could because the new holly is lighter than the old holly, but hoping it'll darken up a little bit. But again, took it down and got about 7 coats of the captains on it. I'm looking forward to trying that what would you say was, Ed, the Allspar?
Allspar?
Yeah, because I've been like the other Rick. I've been mixing and matching the rubbed effect with the gloss because I don't want it to be glossy, and to me the rubbed effect is too dull. Even the epiphanes, and I tend to steer away from the epiphanes a little bit because it's too thick for me. It doesn't go on as nicely as it's just not comfortable for me to do. I have to thin it up with the epiphanes thinner, and by the time I do that and get it, it's about as thin as the captain. So I just go use the captains. But like Rick does, I have to mix it about maybe 30%, 20%, 30% of gloss with the rubbed effect to get the look I want to get. I hadn't heard about that. You just remind me of using the gloss on the trim work though. That's duh. That's what that's my next elbow project. But like on these. Like you look at that picture on the bottom here, the in the center with the little door that goes into the engine. I had to make that piece, and you can see. Is that yours, Kristen?
Yes, we had to make that piece, or Rick made that piece too.
Yeah. See, they gave you the same thing as me. They gave you the ribbon cut. I tried to get the flat cut plywood, but they gave me the ribbon cut. So I got the little ribbon cut thing like that too. So, but it came out okay. It's an interesting.
And yours is mahogany interior.
Yeah.
Yep.
But that's another thing. We can have a whole mahogany discussion if you want. I mean, because the mahogany isn't really mahogany.
Yeah.
So, and I got like 3 different kinds of mahogany in there right now. So I try to make those match. But if you know, another little wacky thing is you notice a little on yours, you don't have a catch, a little clasp, but like a lot of them do. And so I think, well, who is it? Pete, you sent me a picture of the backside of your piece right there. And so because I had to figure out how it went because it was all busted up when I got it. But Mrs. Gant, you'll be pleased to know that it looks good now. You're still here, so. But it looks pretty good. But so I guess maybe in the fall, I can give you a report on how the honey teak and the Bristol work and the captains and the Allspar all held up at the various places.
So there's a question that just came in from Jeff, James, and Peter. But Rick is seeing those questions, but also has a comment too. So Rick.
Yeah, I'm looking at the picture of our galley area, should we say? When we got the boat, they had recently replaced the motor, and the trim and the door is original, but the paneling and everything around it, I had to fabricate. They just used birch plywood and kind of stained it and screwed it together. It wasn't, along with the whole countertop, so had to be replaced. Unfortunately, I hadn't really looked at an original boat. So this one's a little different. This is sort of I kind of replaced what was there, but did it better, should we say? But it's not original. My trim doesn't go up into the stairs, let's say, or my steps don't blend right up into the countertop. They're kind of separate. Also, to answer somebody's question about the drawer, no, that's not the table. I had to. I just installed that over the stove up under the shelf. So where the slider is in the galley.
Our drawers are in the table are very thin and long, and they're not necessarily conducive for silverware. And then I love that, Peter. What has each of you done with the well of hell behind the stove?
Yes.
Firefly originally had the propane water heater there. And then James, just said pressure pump is in yours. So what do folks do in that well of hell, which is basically where this drawer is in the photograph?
Well, I built a shelf there with piano hinges on it so that you could lift that up and store the stuff underneath that you don't need very often, and because that was the well of hell.
Where are we talking about? I'm sorry, I've lost track.
See where the drawer is in the photograph? It's behind the stove.
Outboard side behind the stove.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Port side.
Where the cutting board slides down?
On your boat.
Oh, okay, because I was going to say there's no room there. That counter just lifts up and slides down.
No, in the locker itself.
Yeah, in the locker itself. Basically, we throw cans in there, and hopefully they make it into the bag. But it's essentially 3 feet deep below the lip of the door, with no meaningful management, at least on Firefly, in that space.
Oh, I see what you're talking about.
Got it. One thing we do have in there off to the right, you don't see it here because we had to remove it to get the drawer installed, but it's a knife sleeve for various sharp knives, kind of on that bulkhead side. So
reach your fire to get your knife.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, exactly. Not the smartest thing, but I also used to have a stackable plastic thing where spices went, that had little pull-out drawers, but only the top drawer could pull out. Yeah, by the way, Hunter, Jeff has one and Hunter has one. I'll start with Jeff. Can you say something about the surfaces? Looks black in the photo. Is it Corian? So
Jeff, when I had to restore this, I had to replace the plywood for both of those, the surfaces around the galley, and just because of I guess they cut the original plywood out and so forth. I only had a certain thickness that we could work with. I would have loved to have put in a nice piece of Corian or something, more elegant, but yeah, it's too heavy, right? But no, we were limited, so I had to go back with just Formica, and we went with just a kind of a black gray granite, or I'm sorry, slate sort of color.
It looks like slate from the Formica finish from afar, but obviously it's not slate. But we tried to make it look like slate, like a deep dark gray. Hunter asks, what's the best application method for the rubbed effect varnish?
Brush.
What do you
Well,
say, Ed?
Hunter, it depends on how big of an area you're working.
Well, let's
if I'm
talk
just
about like
doing-
large surfaces like bulkheads or, you know, like the bigger pieces.
I would use a brush, you know, like a nice varnish brush. For just touch up, I use a foam brush. And you know, and most of what I'm doing is, you know, once you've like dealt with it and you've like got it looking the way you want, most of what you're doing from that point forward is touch up.
So it's pretty similar to just the gloss. I don't know if it.
Yeah, and you know, a secret, there are actually there's two things about rubbed effect. One of them is it's the only varnish that you can shake. You don't want to shake any other type of varnish because you're gonna create air bubbles in it. But you can shake rubbed effect. And also, if you take something down to the wood that is going to have rubbed effect on it, you can use a high build gloss to you know, to fill in the grain and to
Yeah, that's what I've done. That works really well.
you know, to raise, you know, to get the surface to the point that you want it to look like. And then for your final two coats, you would put on rubbed effect.
I agree with that, because if you go too much rubbed effect, it gets murky. So
Yeah.
you want to go gloss, 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 and then you're right, your last couple coats. So that way it doesn't, you know, you still get some depth without becoming too muddy. My opinion.
Yeah.
Copy that. Thanks, guys.
Any more questions on, this certainly could take 2 sessions to go through all the things that can happen in interior, including where to stow things and ideas about that. But we're going to move to what we call the lightning round. And in this lightning round, I say 3, but all 4 can take 1 minute to answer their choice of one of these 2 questions about centerboard and worm gear. And first question is mechanical. You know, what's the hardest kind of mechanical maintenance issue with the centerboard and worm gear? And the second question is performance. How and when do you use centerboard in different conditions, points of sale? I have the lovely LLE shown here on a, looks like a close reach, not a close haul, maybe. And Ed, maybe we can start with you. You have 1 minute and I'm gonna start the timer now.
Well, mechanical, it's actually pretty straightforward. The picture you see on the left is like my big oh shit moment since I've owned the boat. I got a line jammed in the centerboard trunk and I tried to crank the centerboard up without realizing a line was in there. And I ended up slightly bending the worm gear. I was able to get it straightened out, but that's why it's poking up like that, because the centerboard is fully up in the trunk, and as the centerboard came up, so did the worm gear. So as far as basic maintenance, one thing I do is every spring when I drop the boat in the water, when it's still in the slings, I have them lifted up about 6 inches and I pour vegetable oil into the trunk and it'll rest on top of the water. And as you crank it up and down, that vegetable oil will lube the worm gear.
Sorry about that, Ed. I love the vegetable oil. You got that squoze in there. We can certainly take these topics and expand upon them in the next session. Rick Stanford, I'm going to go with you, and we're starting now.
Oh. What's that with the mechanical?
You can choose a mechanical or performance. 1 minute. I can restart you if you want.
Oh, well, since I haven't had even the sales up, I'm gonna pass on the performance.
Does that mean you give Walt 45 seconds?
Yeah, I'm gonna delegate him as my 45 seconds.
All right. Okay, so Walt, I'm going to start you at the beginning. Mechanical or performance? 1 minute.
Okay, performance. And my information I'm going to provide is going to be slightly different for the Mark III, II, and the Custom, okay, because of the way they sit in the water. What I'm addressing right now is the Mark III, and my experience with this Centerboard, and I've been able to go out on an individual who has a B40 that is electric at one day as I was giving them some tutelage, and I was able to experiment with all the different levels of, you know, I used to call my boat down 30, you know. The counter doesn't work on the Centerboard very well. So we actually have a peg board for the 120 turns. So if I say down 30, the peg goes to 30. If I say down 60, it goes down to 60. Applications for the Centerboard. Here's one that may be enlightening to some people. I find that if I'm sailing downwind with the spinnaker up and I have just the mizzen, I will put the Centerboard down in case I get, especially if I have an asymmetrical up, because of the wind, you know, pushes on the boat. The Centerboard has a tendency to keep it driving more straight. So I'll have it down like 50 cranks. The other thing is out in heavy seas, I might put down a little bit more Centerboard. If I'm light sailing and pointing up into the wind, I'll adjust the Centerboard basically looking at the, you know, ground speed and the tracking of the boat. For the Mark III, in my opinion, the ideal heel is about 17 degrees. You'll find out if you go more than that, the boat starts slowing down because of the bulbous part of the forward part of the bow. Let's see here. What else can I tell you? Whereas I think with the Mark II and the Custom, because they sit higher, I've never tried this, but I suspect they might be able to heel over a little bit better with better performance. But the nice thing with the board is the fact that it tracks, and you don't necessarily have to have it down all 120 degrees or 20 turns. Sometimes I'll just have it down 30 or 40 to get a good track. So I didn't hear the bell.
There's a paper that kind of describes this, and also I know John Melchner might have contributed some too.
Yeah.
But I know when we have our website up, we're going to have a repository for some of these PDFs and technical. So
and that's a wonderful.
We gave you Rick's time,
okay.
So Rick, we can actually take this. Go ahead. For the next 30 seconds?
Oh, I did.
We actually have a Centerboard, guys? I mean, really? No, seriously. We haven't used ours much. The only problem we ever had is when we bought the boat, the whole trunk was full of barnacles. And yeah, I'd like to know a really good way, if anybody knows, to get paint up there so we can, you know, maybe minimize that problem in the future.
Great. Thanks. Okay, so that completes it, and we have questions about starting with Whitney Drayton. And his question is, has anyone replaced their worm gear? Did Hinckley manufacture the rod, lifting strap, shoe, etc.? And Rick Stanford, I think you might have some
yeah, I didn't
with Hinckley, right?
Yeah, I didn't replace the worm gear, but I had to replace the split washer. If you look at the worm gear, Ed's worm gear at the top, you'll see a little dent there right underneath the crank piece. There's a little bronze split washer that goes in there. And of course, when I took my worm gear out, the first thing that did was the washer, half of the washer dropped down the Centerboard well. So I had to get another one. And so I called or I emailed Hinckley, and I took measurements of the other half. I took a picture and I sent it to them, and I said, can you help me out here? And they said, oh, sure. Yeah, we don't need your picture. We don't need anything. They actually had, well, they sent me a washer. They sent me this little washer, and they sent me a CAD drawing of the worm gear and all the little pieces to the worm gear with my boat's number on it. So apparently, at least some people up there have some records of each boat, and the worm gear happens to be part of it. So I would encourage you, if you need one, or if it never happens that you need one, or any pieces of it, to let them know what the contract number for your boat was, and they might have all the stuff right there ready to make up for you.
I would concur with that. A sister ship up on Shelter Island hit hard with his board down and had some damage done, and the yard there at Cockle Harbor has a lot of experience with Hinckley's, but they got the parts from Hinckley, and I had an opportunity to see the whole thing all taken apart as they were repairing it years ago.
Yeah.
We did replace this on Firefly. I don't know if you can see, but this is actually the worm. And it turns out that one of the businesses that is part of my company is a machine shop. And so the boat was at Hinckley at the time in Easton. They were unable to get a replacement worm gear spec'd or bought. And so I was able to source the Acme screw online, get a long enough piece bought, take it to the shop with the old worm gear, and they rebuilt the worm gear by taking the top off the old one, fitting it to the shaft of the new screw, pinning it, and it's a heated interference fit, and pinning it and building a new screw. So I have a 2017 bronze screw in my 1960 boat.
Sorry, it's Whitney here. Thanks for that. Who's just talking there? That'd be really helpful, because I've got to redo my interior worm screw.
This is Peter Zahn from Firefly.
Oh, thank you, Peter.
And he still has it.
And I still have the part in place just for fun.
Now, Peter, did you say you had a bronze worm gear made?
Actually, what I did was I put the bronze top on the stainless. I think I bought a stainless screw this time.
Yeah, because mine's all steel.
Yeah, no, the original is bronze. I'm holding it in my hand. I don't know if you can see right here. Yeah, the lady with the camera's coming. Right here is where we failed. This is the water line.
Yeah.
And so the diameter at the water line is actually smaller than the minimum diameter of the screw. And in fact, that's where it failed. So I couldn't raise the centerboard.
By the way, Jeff Chandler says his is hydraulic, and it's either all up or all down. No.
So
no
is the screw hydraulic, or is the
Crank.
cylinder hydraulic? Is it a hydraulic cylinder, or is it a hydraulic nut on the screw?
Is Jeff still on?
Yeah, it says there's no screw.
Really?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yep.
There you go.
Wow.
It's very noisy here, but there's no screw. It's just a.
Wow.
That's why it's Hinckley. You can do anything you want if you spend enough money with them.
So for our next session, we actually had 15 minutes allotted, and we're, and rightfully so, the conversation's been great. We are 10 minutes behind. Can folks stay on for 10 more minutes, or to just Q&A? This is open Q&A, and this belongs to membership. You can, for this Jeopardy challenge, you can basically pick your category, whichever category here you have a question, and you have a minute to ask the question and ask the panelists to respond, or someone from the from our membership group. And what we were going to try to do in 15 minutes is get as many questions as we could in, and I would keep score with the dollars. So anyway, with that, we can't really quite go into this in depth unless everyone can stay on. So I'll pause. How is everyone on time?
Okay.
I'm here.
We're good.
10 more minutes? Okay. Or 10, 15 more minutes. All right, cool. So with that, we have pulled out additional topics from our list of categories, which again, we hope that you contribute your own experiences to them. So we have operating systems, interior, exterior deck, and on the water. Operating systems, of course, you know, electrical, you can read here, navigation, lighting, plumbing and head, interior, stowage configuration, holding tank, water tanks, galley salon, exterior deck fittings, rigging and sails, a wild card, you can basically ask anything you want. And then on the water, anchoring, mooring, performance sailing, the B40, and B40 in heavy weather. So we are going to take, whoever wants to go first, feel free to just say, I'll take holding tank, water tanks for 300, or whatever you'd like to do. And we're going to start right now. Ooh, okay.
I'll do
Bye, Quentin. Thank you for joining, Quentin. So I'm sorry, who was that? Who started?
I'll do optimal storage. What are the configurations in the well of hell for those 4 boats?
Recycling.
Okay, I take that, Peter, that's the gist of the question, the total question?
Yep.
Okay, on any time, the port side by the stove, the 3 feet that you're talking about and that gap, I actually have a shelf that has the water pump and expansion tank, and on top I have the drawers and slots to store all my dishes, all my silverware. That would be the forward side of the sliding doors. The aft side, I have storage for cans, for espresso containers that we use, coffee, all sorts of spices, everything like that. One other thing that's optimal on, well, there are 2 other things. One of them is my towel rack. I have a walnut towel rack that's very unique, and I'll put a picture up because there are a couple members that have been envious and have tried to emulate it. It's basically walnut, and it has a little lever that lifts up and down to take the paper towel off and on in the galley area. The one thing that I had that was a selling point when I purchased my boat, and that is the locker in the main cabin across from the head, which is going to be a little bit different than a custom, but mine is a hanging locker. They took the rod out and they put 3 shelves in there. And so that's where we do all of our provisioning. All my tools are in there. I have wood for my stove, for burning stove. And it's incredible how much space is in there, where we can go easily for 20, 30 days at a time with canned goods and the like in there. So I didn't hear a bell. Maybe someone else wants to chime in.
Okay.
All
Just
good.
on time. Okay, so 1 minute to ask the question, 2 minutes to respond. Next person up.
Okay, Ella Lee. LLE has got a conventional layout down below. It does not have a settee or a nav station. So the refrigerator is, it's underneath the is underneath the chart locker. So on the port side, in that corner, the locker from hell, I guess is what we're calling it. I've got two lift out platforms, I guess, for lack of a better term, in there. So you open it up from the counter and all of your pots and pans are in this space. So you pull all of those out and you lift up these two panels, and right below that is the hot water heater, the pressure tank, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's just the basic layout. I did replace the hot water tank a couple of years ago. You have to slide it out into the port sail locker. And then behind the stove with my sliding doors, I have a shelf in there and nothing else. It's just kind of, it's a big area. It's a big space. Actually, I've crawled into it to do some other maintenance work, but that's another story. So other than that shelf, it has a fiddle on it. There's nothing really else in that area behind the sliding doors.
Thanks.
Okay, a next topic from the audience membership, new topic.
Question, I'll talk about navigation lighting.
Okay, and what's the question? Is this Robert? Or, oh, John, I think you're on mute.
Have I got you now?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
you got us now.
The question is, did you upgrade the running lights, and which lights did you use in the upgrade?
Okay, who is the question for, John?
What was that, Kristen?
Who are you directing the question?
I think Michael would be the best one. He probably sails at night more than anybody else in the club.
Okay. Michael, is there a Michael on? What?
Okay, I'll give you 1 minute answer. We went through the expense of buying the Peters and Bay lights. Those are the ones that Hinckley uses on their current top of the line yachts. And they're well worth the extra money. They're big, bright lights, 24-watt bulbs in them. And if we're doing any night sailing and passaging, we take the 25-watt bulbs out and put 10-watt bulbs in just to save the electrical power. But if you really want a great set of running nav lights at night, the Peters and Bay lights are about the best. And the distancing, the lenses are terrific, and they really last a long time. And they're all
The
stable.
LEDs?
No, they're not LED. I haven't looked into putting LEDs in them.
Are there, and actually a piggyback on that question, just to kind of, since we have another 30 seconds here, for those who do use the LED setup, and whoever would like to answer this question, what is the first kind of place you go to replace that LED? Which nav light, bow stern, headlight,
Tricolor.
This is John again. I would agree with tricolor. That's the one you use primarily out in the ocean.
LED.
Really?
Okay. Huh. All right. I think we're on to our next topic. Can folks see the screen, by the way? Because I have people's faces up. I'm not sure if I'm blocking you or you can see the whole screen.
We can see it.
You're good.
Oh, okay, cool. Great. So any other topics, or you can use the wild card, and I'll check the chat.
Actually, I have a question.
Okay.
This would be under performance sailing. When I'm sailing to windward, sailing to weather, I'm in the habit of pulling my traveler to windward to, to change the angle of the sail. Does anyone have any opinion on that as good, bad, or neutral?
Centerline the boom. That's it.
Hunter? Did you have an answer too, or was it just raising your hand?
Oh, I didn't realize I was raising my hand, but yeah, I mean, you're just looking at your leash profile, so yeah, I would agree. Centerline the boom is like a good rule of thumb, but just take a look at your upper leach and how twisted off it is, and kind of go from there. But yeah, bringing the travel up on a B to windward is always good. So I don't know how much you're vang sheeting in this boat. I'm new to the boat, obviously, just have a couple months under my belt, but yeah, sailing upwind, bring the boom up to centerline, see how twisted the upper leach is. I have this very interesting vang setup on the old Pagan, which is like some sort of like horseshoe that you can slide like up and down the boom. So I've been trying to figure out kind of what that how that really helps with the twist or takes the twist out. And yeah, so it's interesting. I don't know if other boats have this setup or not.
Mine doesn't even have a vang.
So Hunter,
There you go.
Peter, that sliding horseshoe that you have is actually intended to be a preventer.
Well, there you go.
Obviously, if you load it up as a vang, it will move its way forward all day long.
When I bought my boat, it had been upgraded at some point with a Hall quick vang, which is a rigid vang. And by having that, it eliminates the need for a topping lift.
So do you find that you use to straighten the leach at all?
Yeah, Peter, I do. And just as kind of because I don't have a topping lift, it's probably wearing, it's like wearing a belt and suspenders. When it's on the mooring ball, I'll take the main halyard and I'll run it aft to the boom, and then I'll, snug it up. Just to try to keep the boom from, swinging any more than it has to.
Do you think that that's this topic is definitely going to be on the next month's session, where we can spend a whole time, around performance sailing. But any other last questions?
I have a last question.
Okay.
And it's about rigging. And I've talked to Ed about this, but on your asymmetrical spinnakers, those of you that have asymmetrical spinnaker, where do you hook the tack line? I noticed that Ed says he takes his right to the cleat, the forward cleat there, and he has the tack held to the forestay with one of those ATN tacker. And that picture that's on the Kristen, that picture that's on that's sort of the homepage for the website. If you look at that, it looks like the tack is actually held down to the that lower rail on the pulpit, the bow pulpit. See how it comes down to that little block on the lower rail of the bow pulpit? So where do you guys hook that tack line?
On
Yeah.
any time, I have a shackle up forward, and I put it through the shackle and back to the cleat. And
But where's that shackle attached to the boat at?
well, if you go up forward where the bow, the iron, and where the forestay comes in, mine
Yeah.
actually has like two holes behind that, and that's where I run it in. And then if I have to come about or to jibe, I actually bring the mizzen or the the spinnaker down and then switch it over to the other side. So it can be a pain.
Oh, I got
But
you. Okay.
That's how I do mine.
Yeah, because my
But I'm-
bow piece there has about 4 holes in it, but the forestay goes all the way to the forward hole. So you
Yeah.
switch it by hand. Okay.
I switch it, but I'm cruising. I'm not racing. So it's a totally different, I'm a cruiser. I
Mhm.
cruise as fast as I can, but not in the racing business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out some good way to attach that.
We're still learning. We're still learning our boat. We actually have a jib boom on ours, which is kind of an unusual configuration. It's great for cocktail parties on the water and while sailing. But we were experimenting with where to put the tack on, or because we had it on a stanchion, one of the stanchion loops, and it failed. So we're still trying to figure out, because using a jib boom is hard to trim the sail just right.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
No.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, so we've gone kind of back and forth on that. I'm not sure if anybody else has a jib boom that they use.
Hmm.
No, nobody else is silly enough to put something as dumb looking on their boat as we.
Well, dear, we did buy Elixir with the jib boom on, so.
Not original equipment.
Oh my goodness. So.
Hey, let me
yeah.
just add one thing to anyone who's on the call. If you're not aware of it, Hinkley has a build file on your boat up in Southwest Harbor. And if you contact them and give them the series number, they will make a copy of it and they will send it to you. And it'll have all kinds of interesting information.
We've got as much as we need.
Yeah, I got mine from Ed. Ed suggests that to me, and when I got a whole like a three-page thing of when Mr. and Mrs. Gant first picked up the boat and sailed it from Maine down to the Chesapeake. A punch list of all the things that were wrong that had to be fixed, like the centerboard thumping and things were missing and all sorts of stuff. So the first thing I did was I went through that list and made sure at least that they were right, at least now. So that was an interesting thing. All these little notes in Mr. Gant's handwriting of all the stuff that went wrong.
Well,
his printing was like a machine.
The big takeaway that I got from mine, because mine included the original contract for when the boat was ordered, and you wouldn't believe how many of the little things on board that you take for granted you had to pay extra for.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, I'll just give one example. The two handles on either side of the companionway as you're stepping into the cockpit, those did not come standard.
Oh.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, Norman did not pay for those.
No.
So we also have photos and contracts of the original group who commissioned these boats and had it tested in a tank and paid for the design. We have notebooks full of documents, and we also have a photo history of Firefly resurrecting a 1960 Bermuda 40. Peter has done most of the work himself. So I'd be happy to share the video or photo library with you guys, and also the document. And thank you so much. It's been great.
Great. Penny, thank you so much. And for a lot of these artifacts, we're going to have a kind of a reference library system on the website when it eventually comes out. We are about 1 to 2 months away from that. I'm working with the developer weekly. Jeff is giving guidance and Mariana's helping too. But our plan is to have, for members only part, certainly we have the public part of the website that passerbyers can see some of the gorgeous pictures. But our social activities, some of the very detailed artifacts that we want to share with each other and have in a share component of the website will be for password access only. And so what I have here, I put up this little Excel spreadsheet where I'm just kind of putting a log of kind of work that our members are doing who want to contribute. It's purely voluntary. And across the right-hand side, which you don't see, are all the categories that we have on that first slide that we had listed. It was 23 and 19 for exterior, interior. But if you're interested in providing some details about the work you've done, we certainly are interested in keeping a log of that. And we also can drive future topics. And the second thing before we close is that anyone who'd like to be on the panel next time around, we'd like to hold these monthly. Please reach out to us, and we, offer up a topic, or I'm going to send a PDF of this PowerPoint out to everybody, so you have it to reference. And that's all I can think of, other than I've learned a lot, and it was a lot of fun to hang out with you all on Zoom today and meet new people, Hunter, others. Jeff, any final words?
Oh, just thanks, Kristen. This was great. And let's just keep this up.
Yep.
You got it.
It sure was, Kristen. Thank you for everything you did. A lot of hard work preparing this. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. It was definitely a labor of love. So I got a ton out of it. I really appreciate it. Tell others as well from where you're located geographically. If you know any other B40 members who are not members yet of the B40 Association, please encourage them to join, because I think adding more to this kind of forum will certainly keep it tight and orchestrated so we get all the questions in. But we would love your feedback. Please send feedback after what we could do better. This is our first time around, so we know that there's going to be some hiccups here and there or whatever, but please send us your thoughts. Okay.
Thank you. Great, Kristen. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you in hiatus, John.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Walt.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
You're welcome. Thanks again.
Go
Good night.
Good night,
Cheers.
everyone. Thank you.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.